In this tutorial, I want to talk about nested publisher streams. In the first part, I already talked about operators that change the value or what you pass. But in this case, we actually have a stream inside a stream. So you change from a value to a substream. And in order to do this, we have two ways. There's two implementations that I can just think of. One is map with switchToLatest, and the other one is flatMap. So we're going to use both of them, so you see what's the advantage of these. So I already started here this project, but I'm not going to... You can find the link in the description box. I'm going to create here a new group because I want to demonstrate substreams with fetching images from the internet with URLSession. So I'm naming this group images. And what I want to do is I want to fetch images. So this is, I need to create a view model. So this is a Swift file. And this is an image fetcher. I said I'm going to use combine, so I'm importing combine. This is the class image fetcher. Since I'm in Swift UI, I need to use here observable object. So in this case, I'm going to not make it too much trouble about the data models. I'm going to use here URLs that we want to load the images for. So this is my URL paths. So I need a couple of URLs, and I just collected these. You can use something of your convenience. I try to use here images with different sizes, so it's 5 different images. And the end result that I want to have is I want to have the UI image. So this is my property is an image, a UI image. Optional because in the beginning I don't have any. Since I'm in Swift UI, I need to use here, if I want to use it in the UI, a add published. And if I want to use UI image, I need to either have UI kit or Swift UI. So I import Swift UI. But since I want to dynamically load this, I need to have inside another stream. I need to have here some other publisher where I can inject and request new images for. So I'm going to call this load image. This is a current value subject of string. I'm using here a current value subject instead of a passthrough subject because in this case I have a value that I can use in my UI to say which one I actually loaded. This is not going to fail, and we start by having an empty string because we don't have anything to load yet that we want to load. And the last, we have a subscription, a property where we can store our subscriptions with combine. So this is a set of any cancellables. So in the initializer, I want to create my data stream. Every time new value is arriving here and from this publisher, from this current value subject, I want to load another image. So first I'm going to subscribe to this publisher. And right now I have here strings, but I want to have URLs. So we need to transform the strings to URLs and transforming with a map operator. And I can create a URL from string $0. So now this is going to return me a optional. And if it's not going to work, I want to ignore this nil values. So in this case, I'm going to filter out and unwrap my nil values, my optionals with compact map. Now I have a URL that I want to use with URLSession dataTaskPublisher, but URLSession dataTaskPublisher is a publisher. So I need to transform these values in another publisher. So for example, if I use map, I have here the URL. And with this, I can create a URLSession.shared.dataTaskPublisher with URL and use my URL. Now this is giving me the response and data, but I only want to have the data. So we can use map with keypath to transform this and only take the data. This is now the data blob, but I want to have an image. And UI image has an initializer with data. So we need to use here map to transform a data into an image. So this is a UI image from data. This is returning an optional UI image, but I want to again ignore it if it's null. So I'm using here compact map instead of just map. You might now ask, what the hell is this? I have a operator. There's a substream in there. And I want to take the value. Okay, let's try sync. But you see the output type is a publisher. I don't want to have the publisher, I want the value. That's why you can use here switchToLatest. Just going to take the sync account out again. And if you try again now to use sync, because I want to see the automatic values, my sync receives here the images as a value. You also get the completion handler, completion in, because I didn't talk about error handling yet. So this is completion. Now I have fetched an image for the value that I'm passing here, for the path I'm passing here, but I need to place it in my image property here. So when I receive this value, I want to say self.image is the image that I get here, because I have here self. I don't want to have a reference cycle. I need to use unowned self. And the hint tells me the sync is unused because I have not stored my subscription. So I'm going to store this in my subscriptions. So this might look a little bit confusing, especially since I have here this nested publisher stream. And I hope it's going to be clear if I now show you the UI to it. So I'm creating a new file, which is a SwiftUI view. This is my image view. So again, I need to have here my image fetcher, and I use the state object var image fetcher. This is a image fetcher. So you can select image to download. So I'm putting here this in a VStack, and since I do have some URLs that I could fetch, but I want to let the user choose which one to fetch. So obviously I first need to display my URLs. So I'm going to show here a list of the available URLs that I have right now. So again, this time I'm using data. So in this case we are having I want to show the URL paths. The ID is self, and this is the path. So here I want to show it and also let the user select it, so I'm directly using a button to get the interaction. So this is a button with an action, and as the text I'm just going to show the path. When the user presses on this, I want to fetch this image. So I need to tell my image fetcher to load the image. So this was the subject we started with, by sending a new value, and that's the path. I show all the options to what to fetch. I do fetch it, but I need to actually show it. So below my list, I'm going to show this image. But since the image can be null, I only should do that if I have an image. So I'm going to use just a gray box as the placeholder and place my actual image on top if I have one. So I need to place it on top, but that's why I use a Z-stack. So the placeholder is just a gray box, so I use here color.gray. And then I can check if my image fetcher has an image. So if this is not null, then I can create now an image from a UI image. So this is an image this has an initializer with UI image. And this is my image fetcher's image, which I can now force unwrap because I know it's there. This is going to, just to make it a little bit nicer to see, I'm going to resize this so it does fit on the screen. And I make the scale to fit, just adding maybe some padding. So okay, this is enough for this. So I'm going to add this to my main UI. So either you change it for the content view, or as me, I have in my content view a tab view. So this is the image view with the tab item text.image. So I have now my first tab. If I go now in the one that I care about, you see here, maybe I just show. So I'm here again in my image fetcher where you see the 5 paths. These are now displayed as buttons, so if I tap on them, it is going to load it. And also I see here a problem. Publisher change from background files not allowed. This is true because I didn't check that. If you use URLSession, this is running on a background thread. It's actually a concurrent background queue. So in order to, just before I put it on the property that I use with the UI, which is this image property, I should go to the main thread. And I can do this with receive on dispatch queue.main. So So now if I run again, this should not happen anymore. So now in the image tab, I now tap on the first one and it's loading this one. So if you tap on the different one, it's going to switch and load the different one. Now if I tap again, it would load it again, which I really don't want to. So we can, because we have a nice data stream, prevent from reloading the same thing again by saying the load image, the file name. If I'm going to remove all the duplicates, so all the elements, all the paths that are arriving after one of the other that are the same are going to be removed. So then the other thing is, maybe I want to, when I tap on here, the old one I want to erase. You can also do this by subscribing a second time to this load image. So I can say load image, don't sync. I don't care about the value. I'm just going to, because I only need to set my image to null. Self.image is null. That's why I need to have here unknown self. And store this in my subscriptions. And I probably also should do that with remove duplicates. Remove. So I'm loading a small one and then I'm tapping on the large one and it's going to be empty. So that's why I had here different images. So I have some larger ones that take longer. If you probably should have made this here somehow slower, because I'm here using switchToLatest, if I'm having a very slow internet connection as the user and my image would still load, and then I change my mind and I tap on a different one, the first fetch is going to, if it's not finished yet, is going to abandon. This is because I use here switchToLatest. If you have now again a look at the data stream, you see I have here some operators after another that are very that are just placed after the other. This remove duplicates and compact map, also this receive operator. But now in the map operator, I have here some nested data stream. And in there I have another couple of operators. So that's why I try to say that using this map with switchToLatest, nested publisher is very different because you're kicking off different substreams inside your stream than just a plain map switching the type. Now I have here, I can only load one image at a time with the switchToLatest. That's the specialty, that's why it's switchToLatest. Well, what if when I launch my application, I want to show already a couple of images. I want to load them maybe even concurrently. switchToLatest is not going to do it. That's why we have another special way of creating substreams, and this is with this flatMap. So I'm going to use these same 5 images to load them now with combine. I'm going to leave this in one image fetcher here. I'm going to create another view model. So we can start fresh. So this is a Swift file because this is the image collection. This is image collection fetcher. I need to use some combine in here. This is a class image collection fetcher. Since I'm in SwiftUI, I need to use observable object. So I do want to load the same images. I'm going to copy the same URLs. Then I here also want to start with a nested publisher stream. So my current value is subject. And I need to have here a property that holds these images. So this is a var images, and this is an array of images, of UI images. That's why I need to use here import SwiftUI. This is a UI image. I start with an empty array. And again, I have to use here add published because I want to show that in my SwiftUI views. Published. So now let's fetch these images in the initializer. So I would create a data stream, and in the initializer, after I created them, I'm directly going to say load me the first 3 files. So that's why after setting up data streams, I'm directly in the initializer going to send here some of my file names. So for example, my URL paths, the 0 one, the first, and the second. And then if the user chooses, he can load even more. I use the same data stream for initially loading them, and then that user can also request more images. So we have to create, similar to before, a data stream. If you have a look at the data stream before, I subscribe to my load images, then I created the URL. But here the substream that I created was with map and switchToLatest, and that's not going to work in this case. So I'm going to copy this part until the switchToLatest and paste it in my collection fetcher. So I'm not going to use here map, I'm going to use here flatMap. Usually flatMap makes a little bit of a problem with the types. And if you have chosen iOS 13, so I'm going to show you this. I'm changing my version to iOS 13 because now it's going to complain. So this is a very unhelpful comment, ambiguous without more context. And the reason is that it's not matching the errors anymore, because what's above my flatMap has a error type of never, or failure type of never. And here I'm producing a failure. I could create a couple of them. For example, my dataTaskPublisher could throw a URLSession error. So we could now match these errors. I'm going to talk in an extra episode, in an extra tutorial about this. Just want to show you the quick fix. So we need to get this error out of our streams. And I'm going to use here a catch operator. So this is giving you actually the error. And I'm going to replace this here with an empty. So this is basically, it's basically ignoring the errors. It does not pass any error or a value. So the catch operator expects you to have another publisher inside. So and this is a special publisher that doesn't publish anything. So it just says, replace it with an empty publisher, just finishes, never publishes anything. So if there's a problem, we don't see it afterwards, but at least we don't crash, destroy our data streams. So now I have here my image, and I want to do something with my images. So I have a couple of images and I want to collect them. So I can also show you another thing. We cannot use collect because this is only emitting the whole collection once the data stream is finished, but I want to continuously, every time I have a new value, emit my new array of images. In this case, we can use the scan operator. So this asks for initial value. This is actually very flexible in what you can do with the scan operator. But in this case, I'm just going to bunch up my images in an array. It asks me here for an initial value. In the beginning, I have no images, so I'm just going to create an empty array of images. So you see here, I get my array and I get the newest value or the next. So every time a new image comes to the scan operator, this closure is called. So you do get the old, whatever you generated. In this case, I generated an array of images, and you can add the newest value you get from upstream to what already you calculated. So in this case, I'm just going to add here my next array to my next images to my array. So now I have here an array of images, and there's not even an error in the stream. So I can use assign to on. We would say on self assign it to images. You shouldn't use it because it's going to create a reference cycle. So now I need to change my deployment target again to 14. So since I cannot use assign, I'm going to simply use here sync, and I get my images. I'm going to change my self's images to my new images. Because I have to use here self, I need to again use unknown self and store this in subscriptions, which I did not create yet. So this is a subscriptions. This is a set of any cancellables. So I can store my subscription in there. This is it for the view model. I'm now directly loading here a couple of images. So let's see this in a view. I create here a new file. This is a SwiftUI view. This is my image collection view. So again, I need to use this view model with a state object var image fetcher. This is a image collection fetcher. So I'm going to display now my images that I directly here fetched. So this is my image fetcher's images. So for each of these images, I'm going to create here a image from UI image with this image. And I'm going to make this here resizable. And maybe I put here a fixed frame, just so now I see all of them at the same time. And I'm going to use here scale to fit. And I do need to use id.self. If you run this in the preview, you need to use here live preview. And now we get the 3 images that I just loaded, that I directly loaded. So let's just add, similar to before, also on the top, my array of names. And I'm just going to make these images smaller. You can also use a grid view. So I'm going to add this to my main application in the content view. This is image collection view. Tab item text collection. If you run this and you go to this tab, they might appear not simultaneously. So in my image collection fetcher, the order that I actually fetch them, that I sent them past down here, is I start with this really long one. Then I use here this one placeholder, so this is this pink one, and then the other cat image. But you see they don't arrive in the same order that I sent them down here. This is because this flatMap is doing these operations concurrently. It's fetching all of them, all of these images. One reason why this works, flatMap is the huge exception for combined data streams, because everything else works in serial. What I mean is one value is passing down the stream after the other. This order is consistent from what the publisher publishes and the subscriber receives. But in this flatMap operator, if you have a publisher or a stream that is running on a concurrent thread, like my URLSession dataTaskPublisher, the flatMap will create multiple of these data streams simultaneously, and that's why I have here 3 errors. Signing here that I have here 3 of them at the same time. They will run concurrently. You can, in some cases, because I cannot access here URLSession's queue. If you want to limit how many operations you want to have maximum, you can decide that depending on what queue you're letting your data stream here receive the values on. But I don't have an access here to URLSession. The other thing that happens that you can do now with flatMap, if you want to have more control about how many processes you want to be allowed concurrently, they have now another thing added to flatMap. So this is one of the few occasions that Combine changed with iOS 14. And this is flatMap maximum publisher. This is similar to saying how many concurrent operations do I allow. So now it's unlimited if you don't say it. So this is maxPublisher. And this is maximum. You can say here unlimited, this is default, or maximum, maybe I want to only let it run one by one. So if I run this again, seem to have a problem with my last one. Okay, and I have forgotten again to go back to the main queue. So receive on dispatch, should it .main be a little bit more visible, because sometimes I just forget it. Especially if I don't set it myself, it's included in URLSession. If you go in this tab, you see that the first image is actually the one that I also sent downstream. This is because I told it here to only have the substream one by one with this maximum publisher. So it loads the first image and only then it starts another process. That's why in this case you see these images one by one appearing. I actually passed 3 images. And the reason is, if you have here this limited flatMap, some of the values might get lost, because basically the flatMap says, I don't want to have anything right now. But the publisher, our current value subject, could publish here 3 values. And because our subscriber, the flatMap, only accepts a couple of them, it's actually ignoring the values that come in between. It's because there's no buffer right now. There's no demand from our flatMap to take all of them, so some of them are ignored, like the second value. If you have here, if I directly say I want to load 4 images now, so I just added one more of my URLs. The first one that is passed, this one, the 0 image, this is the one that directly is accepted by flatMap, because at that moment it doesn't have anything. Then the first one is processed. Our current value subject is already sending all these other values, which flatMap doesn't accept because it doesn't have a demand. Once it's finished, it's demanding one more value from our publisher. And because of here a current value subject, it still has one value left. So you would only see the first one and the last one. If I go to the collection tab, you see I only get two images still. So what I need to do is here, because I don't have, my publisher doesn't store them. The publisher doesn't wait until my subscriber asks for it, it's just ignoring them. But we can use here the buffer operator. So you can say how many values do you want to store in there. So for example, I can say I store here 100 URLs, I'm okay. The buffer strategy, so by request or keep full. And then what should happen when the buffer is full? Should I drop the newest or the oldest? I'm going to drop the oldest. So now when I run, this buffer is going to buffer the values, some of the streams that otherwise would get lost. So if I go on my last tab, you see now I have all these 4 images. So this is the first really big image, then the small image, then the second big image, and then the fourth. I can comment this out again, the buffer, and then change the maximum publisher to 4. So now it will run 4 of them concurrently. It will create 4 separate data streams from URLSession. And then each of these separate data streams running on the URLSession queue, when it's finished, the values from this substream nested streams are then injected in the mainstream and then received here, bunched up into this array of images. So if I go back to the collection, my 2 images that are really small arrive the first, and then one by one these 2 images come because they are really big. This is super handy because you want to populate your view the first time it's appearing, so you're going to fetch a couple of them, but you want to maybe prioritize the first ones, so the list is going to be populated more from the top down. So for this maximum publisher is really helpful. If you, in this kind of situations, don't know what's going on, you can always use some kind of print operators, so just a little bit of debugging. So you can put, if you don't believe me, this maximum publisher here, so I'm going to put this here at 1 again. Here I'm putting a print statement, just need to have a nice emoji. So this one, and then I put another print here. So this is 1, and then another print statement here. So it's going to be a little bit much. And then another print statement here. After the flatMap, you don't need to use as much as I do. Okay, I just use the red ones, A and B, outside my flatMap, and then 1 and 2 inside. So, and I'm right now only going to load here 2 images at once, otherwise it's a little bit overwhelming from the print statements. So I go in my collection tab. I see now everything. First, in this data stream, the outside the mainstream is created. So this is from our image down to our subscriber, this sync. So that's why you see these red print statements, or my AB print statements, saying here we are receiving this subscription request unlimited, because sync sends an unlimited request. But then at the A position, we see something interesting, because above this flatMap, we now have a request of 1. And this is exactly coming from the maximum publisher of 1. My flatMap says I can only accept 1 value right now. I do it 1 by 1. I cannot do multiple things at the same time. Then it's the A position knows, okay, I can send something. So it's sending the first URL. Then we see this 1 and 2 print statements. So this is our nested publisher streams created. This is the receive subscription, request unlimited. Then once the URLSession publishes something, it's injecting this value into the stream. And I do see here the whole response because the URLSession has a response and the data. So I see this whole response with the status code of 200, and you can have a more look into. This is a lot of print statements. And then at the position 2, so after the URLSession publishes the data response, we are taking the data, creating a UI image of it, and then at the 2 position you see this is then receiving this value. The value is then from this nested publisher stream goes back to the main stream. And you see this here with at my B position, I received this new value. Once this value is passed to the main stream, my nested publisher stream, my substream, is finished because it's done its job. And you see here that both my 1 and 2 position receive a finished. Once this is done, so now my flatMap has finished one data stream and is requesting one more to its upstream publisher. This is this print operator right now. So we get our print sees it's requesting one more publisher. It sends one more URL, and then again we are seeing here that the next publisher stream, sub-nested publisher stream, is created. And the whole game starts all over again. So if you sometimes don't know when things are getting lost, adding a couple of these print operators is quite nice, especially if you're using here compact map, which you don't know what's going on. So I'm going to comment all of these out, and I'm putting here again the buffer in, and maybe I'm going to keep loading 2 images concurrently, so maximum 2. And I'm going to change this now to load 3 images at the first. In order to fetch dynamically these images, and I can now even tap on one more and load more images, or just load one of the other images again. In order to do this in a data stream, we use this current value subject load image and started a publisher stream with a nested publisher. So we can inside our data stream have another publisher stream to have a URLSession dataTaskPublisher and fetch this images from. So you have map operators that really just change the value, like map, compact map, or throwing functions, decoding. Because in this case, I have here this remove duplicates, so I can really fine tune what I want to fetch. Maybe I can even add here a filter to not fetch this or change my stream in a way that I don't fetch the same thing all over again. And I have really a lot of control. I can also say debounce or throttle to not too many fetches in the same time. So we saw now map with switchToLatest, where I can start tasks that I might abandon halfway through in favor of a new arriving value. Or if I want to concurrently do something, have some batch processes, then I can use flatMap. I try to show you that there's some interesting use cases with this flatMap maxPublisher. The other very important use case for this nested publisher is error handling. I'm going to go more into detail in a separate video. You can find the link in the description. So you will see things like catch again, retry, set failure type, replace error, map error. But a big part of error handling is using this flatMap because it helps you to not complete your data stream in a very nice way. Check that out if you want to learn about error handling. Give this video a like if you learned something useful. Let me know if something is missing or it was too confusing so I can have another try to explain it. Until next time, happy coding!